Hello there, fellow travelers. Tim from Secret Fire Books here with my monthly reading report, this time for the month of January 2025. 2025 is off to a pretty interesting start. I read 7 books in the month of January, which is pretty good for me considering how slow of a reader I am. And I started it off pretty well with Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis. I'm a big C.S. Lewis fan. I constantly read the Chronicles of Narnia books as a kid, and I'd never read his space trilogy before. So when someone gave me the first book in the series for Christmas, I was really excited to get it started. And I had a lot of fun with this book. I put up a full review on the channel, so if you've not seen that already, please check out that video if you want my full thoughts on Out of the Silent Planet. But something I did not mention in that review is just how much I appreciate Lewis's writing style. Lewis has always had a very dry but very charming, sarcastic wit that he applies to his writing. And the way he would always describe his characters and the situations they'd get in the Chronicles of Narnia really amused me as a kid. And to see him apply that same kind of wit to an adult-oriented science fiction novel was really interesting. And so I really gelled well with the prose in this book. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. It's a very squishy science fiction novel, a very kind of pseudoscience science fiction novel that was published before the golden age of science fiction. But it was still a lot of fun, and I'd highly recommend it to any fans of classic sci-fi. But after that, I wanted to read more C.S. Lewis. I had got my palate whetted for some more C.S. Lewis. And so I picked up one of his nonfiction books. I picked up Mere Christianity, which I had also not read before. And I might lose some of you at this portion of the video, might lose your interest, but I am a Christian. I have grown up in a Christian household. I'm very involved with my church, and I love books about Christianity, or with Christian themes at least. And so I was very eager to pick this one up because I had not yet read it. And it was a very interesting read. If you don't know, this is a sort of practical look at the fundamental theology of Christianity. If you don't know, C.S. Lewis was an atheist, a staunch atheist, before he converted to the Church of England. And so this kind of is a tale of two books. The first half is sort of an apologetics course in which he takes the reader in a very basic breaking down, a scientific breaking down of the core beliefs of Christianity, and explains them in very basic, almost layman's terms, but in a sort of scientific method. It's really interesting. And then the latter half is sort of the Christian half, in which he kind of affirms and encourages different disciplines in his fellow Christians. So I thought it was a really cool read. It's definitely not for everyone, but I really appreciated it. I had a good time with it. And like I said, he has that very sarcastic English wit, so I was entertained thoroughly. And then after that, I got back into some fiction. Hopefully I'll pick your interest back up again, because then I jumped into Conan the Conqueror by Robert E. Howard, also known as The Hour of the Dragon. This is the one and only Conan novel that Robert E. Howard wrote. And we did this for the Elusive Exclusive Book Society. This was my pick for our most recent episode of Eves. And to be completely honest, I chose to read Hour of the Dragon because I wanted Jake to read some Robert E. Howard. Despite the fact that he named his channel Pulp Mortem, he had never read anything by Robert E. Howard, often considered the king of pulp fiction. And so I picked this purely so I could get Jake's take on Robert E. Howard and the Conan mythos. And thankfully, we also brought a bunch of other people along. We had Kevin Toll, as well as Eric Wagg and Joseph Reed's Books joining in to talk about some Conan, and it was a lot of fun. I really liked that live stream, and hopefully we've converted Jake to the ways of Robert E. Howard. I hope so, because everyone needs to read Robert E. Howard. He's one of the best writers of all time. And after finishing Conan, I wanted to dip back into some classic science fiction, so I actually picked up an Ace Double. I'd never read an Ace Double book before, and what I originally planned to do was read both the books in this bind-up and then compare them. I would do a video review where I compared both books, juxtaposing their strengths and weaknesses, and seeing what novel came out on top, which one was the superior novel in this Ace bind-up. But unfortunately, both of these books ended up being real duds. They were both really boring reads for me, and so by the time I finished this whole thing, I really was not up to making any kind of video on either of them. And so, as you can see, the first one is A Ring Around the Sun by Clifford D. Simic. I've heard a lot of good things about Clifford D. Simic. He comes highly recommended. Ira from SF Words of Wonder says that Simic is one of his favorite classic science fiction writers. A lot of people, including Michael K. Vaughan, say that his book City is one of their favorite science fiction novels of all time. And I really wanted to read his stuff, but I don't think Ring Around the Sun was the right place for me to start, because I found this to be a very dry read. There were actually several times in this book where I was falling asleep. I was so bored. And it starts off as kind of, I guess you'd call it a techno thriller. There's nothing really science fiction about it until about halfway through, and then it gets very sci-fi. There are alternate realities, characters jumping in and out of alternate realities, and there are mutants. Stop me if you heard this before. In this world, there are mutants who are sort of this next step in human evolution. They have developed these superhuman mental and physical capabilities, and because of this, the world has kind of turned against them. Society at large has come to hate these mutants and treat them as outcasts. Man, that really sounds like a certain Marvel comic that we all know and love, doesn't it? So while I was reading this, I was thinking to myself, maybe Stan Lee got a little inspiration from Clifford D. Simic when he wrote X-Men. I can't be sure, but that's at least what I thought. Unfortunately, that's where the comparisons can kind of end with this. There's no real mutant action. There's no real superpowers on display. We're told that these mutants have interesting superpowers, but we never see them at play. And yeah, at that point, my interest was totally gone. I ended up skim reading the rest of it. And yeah, it had a very, very kind of lethargic effect on me. Like I said, I was nodding off several times. And so at the end of that, I flipped this book over and started reading Cosmic Manhunt by L. Sprague de Camp. Now, I give L. Sprague de Camp a lot of crap on this channel. I cannot forgive how he butchered the Robert E. Howard books for those Lancer paperbacks. But at least his own original material has something going for it. I've read a couple of his short stories before, and they're fun, if nothing else. So I thought to myself, well, at least Cosmic Manhunt will be some good, mindless entertainment, right? No. This book starts off as a sort of private investigator mystery novel. The main character is a PI who's hired by this rich guy to find his missing daughter, who's apparently run off with a boyfriend of hers. And it takes place in the distant future where we have colonized other planets. Humankind has colonized other planets, has made contact with other alien races, and the PI discovers that these lovebirds, these missing lovebirds, have escaped Earth and traveled to the planet Krishna. I will give you one guess as to which geographical and ethnic culture the planet Krishna is based on. If you said Indian, you are correct. But it's not just Indian. The planet Krishna is so stereotypically, cartoonishly Indian that it hurts. It is borderline offensive. And when I started reading it, I thought to myself, okay, at the very least, we'll get some hilarity, some good old-fashioned, goofy, golden age racism out of this. But that was not true as well. This book is just insanely boring from beginning to end. There's a couple humorous scenes, I guess. There is one scene that's basically, beat for beat, the scene from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where they're all seated down at the dinner table with the child emperor, or whoever that was, and all the food before them is just trays of deep-fried insects and eels and snakes and stuff like that. And I thought maybe George Lucas and Steven Spielberg got some inspiration for Temple of Doom from this book. I highly doubt it, but that's what it seemed like to me, at least. And aside from that, it was just a really meandering story. I get the feeling that L. Sprague de Camp had no idea where this story was going. I think he just wanted to write a story that took place on an India-inspired planet and write a sort of Sword and Planet-style novel that had elements of, missing person mystery going on. But again, I found myself dozing off multiple times while reading this, and that's never a good sign. I think it's the cardinal sin of a book when you find yourself dozing off in the middle of reading it. But after all that, I picked up Jake's next pick for the Elusive Exclusive Book Society, and that was The Atlantic Abomination by John Brunner. I'd never read anything by John Brunner before, so I was pretty interested in this. And it's a sort of science fiction horror story. I actually don't know how much I can talk about the plot without giving any of it away, because as you can see, this is a very thin little volume right here. And I will say that it is about an underwater expedition that goes horribly wrong. I think that's all I'm willing to say about it for now. So if you want to know more, please check out our Eves live stream. We're going to be doing that this Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central Time on Pulp Mortem, on Jake's channel, Pulp Mortem. And we'll be joined by News from the Gelding and The Book Thing. I'm excited to talk to those guys and see what they think about this John Brunner book. It'll be a good time. And lastly, I was able to squeeze in one more book into January. I squeezed in The Guns of Avalon by Roger Zelazny. This is the second book of the Chronicles of Amber series. And to be fair, I finished this book on February 1st, but I'm going to count it as one of my January reads. And I liked it. I don't know if I like it more or less than Book 1, Nine Princes in Amber, but I did enjoy it. I will say that a lot of people hyped this up as being the sort of sword and sorcery, heroic fantasy entry in the Amber series. And I didn't get that at all. I think maybe the first 2 or 3 chapters had elements of sword and sorcery, but this is definitely not anything like Robert E. Howard or any of those old school pulp fantasies. This is very much Roger Zelazny's typical genre blending, dimension hopping epic fantasy. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but yeah, it's definitely not sword and sorcery. But I had a good time with it. I'm going to be doing a full review for all of the Amber series that I read from now on. And so yeah, look forward to that sometime in February. This month I also got back into reading manga, and so I read the first 4 volumes in my favorite manga series, Fullmetal Alchemist by Hiromu Arakawa. There is Volume 1 with our protagonist Ed and Al on the cover there with a very shiny metallic foil on the cover. There's Volume 2, also with the shiny metallic foil. And then Volume 3, which was a later produced volume, so it doesn't have the foil, but we got Colonel Mustang, as well as his Lieutenant Hawkeye, and Major Alex Louis Armstrong, who is absolutely one of my favorite characters. That guy is hilarious. And then I read Volume 4 out of this bind-up, this omnibus edition of the first 4 volumes with a nice bit of wraparound art. We got Scar and some of the 7 Deadly Sins there on the cover. Something that I did not talk about in my Fullmetal Alchemist review that I did was that the series had 2 different anime adaptations. One in 2003 that was just called Fullmetal Alchemist, and then another in, I think, 2010 called Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And Brotherhood took on the entire story of the manga, followed it very closely, whereas I think the manga was being produced around the same time that the 2003 anime was, and so the anime caught up with the manga fairly quickly, and they sort of went off in a different direction. But not only did they go off in a different direction, they went off with a story that was basically antithetical to everything that Fullmetal Alchemist had going for it. And it really ruined some of Arakawa's characters and themes, particularly this character, Scar, who in the original series goes from basically a serial killer to a very interesting anti-villain. I won't say too much because I really want people to read this series more and experience the story and the characters because they're really, really special. But yeah, I'm excited to read the next 2 volumes in this bind-up and then get moving into the rest of the series. I love Fullmetal Alchemist. Can't wait to finish that series again. I've read it I probably read all of Fullmetal Alchemist like a dozen times. As for the other books that I'll be reading in February, I've only decided on 2 of them definitively. First, I'm going to be reading Assignment Budapest by Edward S. Ahrens. I have been chomping at the bit to start this book. I picked it up from a used bookstore back in either October or November of last year. It is the 5th book in the Assignment series by Edward S. Ahrens. I read Assignment White Raja last year, and it was one of my favorite books from last year. So I'm very excited to check this out. I started reading a little bit of it this morning, as you can see, and I'm excited to see what kind of crazy scenarios our CIA hero Sam Darrell gets into this time. So yeah, Assignment Budapest should be some good old-fashioned spy thriller goodness. And after that, I'm going to start reading an indie fantasy novel. This is Paladin Unbound by Jeffrey Spate. This is the first book in his Archives of Avelium series. I believe the 3rd book just came out recently. And this book comes highly recommended from John A. Douglas, a fellow YouTuber and self-published author. And I figured if John, who wrote The Black Crown, which ended up being one of my favorite fantasy novels from last year, says that this book is good, then it's definitely worth a read. So I will definitely be checking out Paladin Unbound, and if I like it, I will most certainly pick up the other 2 books in the series. But that's all for now, guys. Let me know in the comments, as always. Have you read any of these books? Did you like them? What do you think of them? And until next time, as always, farewell and... No, wait. That's not the end of the video. I have one more thing I want to say. Okay, so guys, big announcement. Just the other day, I got a ton of free books. Jake from Pulp Mortem, good friend of the channel, sent me 98 books for free. I only had to pay shipping for them. I won't go into the details, but he recently came into essentially a massive fortune of books. Literal hundreds, potentially thousands of books. And he was kind enough to share some of them with me and some other folks in the booktube space. So I want to do a book haul. But the thing is, with 98 of these books, I don't know if I can do it justice with just one video, because it would be an absolute unwieldy length of time to do this in one video, and I don't want to split it up into multiple videos. That's not really my style. So I want to do a live stream. So what I'm going to do is this Friday, February 7th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to jump on a live stream, and it's just going to be a real casual kind of thing. We're just going to hang out. I'm going to answer some questions from you guys in the chat and show off these books one by one and talk at length about each of them, because there's some really cool stuff that Jake sent me here. So I'll throw up some pictures on screen showing you a little bit of what I'm talking about. So yeah, just mark your calendar, guys. This Friday, February 7th, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be live streaming this massive Dragon's Hoard of books, as I've been calling it. And yeah, it should be a good bit of fun. Stick around, ask some questions. I'll see if I can answer all the questions that I get in the chat. And I've been wanting to live stream more recently on my own, so hopefully this will be a good start to something like that. But yeah, that's it for now. Catch you guys later. Keep reading. All that good stuff. See ya!